I want to tell you about neutral observation and how it is my superpower. And I am not exaggerating. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new to me, I am Jennifer and I am here every day. I'm trying something a little bit different and I'm thinking about removing all the editing and just focusing on sharing and being of service because that is my intention. And when we can get caught up in the professionalism and all the details and listening to so much advice, it just distracts. And I'm sorry that that is a lesson that I feel like I have to keep learning. And I'm compelled and I would say enthusiastic and inspired to share with you about neutral observation. And please don't be, I don't know, like I feel like sometimes it doesn't have a cachet to how it sounds, or maybe it just sounds too easy. And it literally is a power tool. It is a power tool and a power skill that would that changed my life, and I've seen how it changes others' lives, but it would change the world because it is a practice. It's a skill that becomes a practice. And once you have learned it and have experienced it enough, you will without effort return to it again and again. And then eventually it will become something that you choose. And every time you walk into an environment, you can remind yourself of how you want to bring that with you. But let me just first share with you a little bit about where I learned it, how long ago I learned it, and how it has built over time. And then I want to share with you a little bit about how you can practice it. And then I'll probably share maybe a couple of examples of how it has changed my life. My intention is to be succinct, but I want to be really open and say that one of my challenges is that I am maybe undiagnosed ADHD, I don't know, but I am a verbose speaker and I have a lot of thoughts that sometimes take me in different directions. And my intention is to stay focused on the purpose of this video, and that is to tell you about how this practice that I'm super enthusiastic about and am on a mission to share until I take my last breath, because I care so much about humanity and about our quality of existence. So neutral observation was actually a skill that was taught through what they call an observation journal in my master's program in spiritual psychology that I did 25 years ago. I started the program in 1998 and I graduated in 2000 with a master's degree in spiritual psychology. And it was among, I believe, 40 skills that we learned in that 2-year degree. At that time, that program also had, you could go on and do 3 more years and get a degree in counseling psychology, which was originally my intention. But my career started to take off and I still was paying off my undergrad loans. So it was a little bit of more so probably a financial decision. I just didn't want to be in more debt. But the program changed my life. And I could do a whole video about that and how spiritual psychology, which I'll just share in a nutshell, there's actually a program out of Columbia now around spiritual psychology. I believe there's a master's program there. This program that I did was created by master educators that were literally every single weekend, every single year refining the program because it was an experiential program. And that means that everything that we were learning, we were sitting in trios and we met once a month, one full weekend a month, and then 1 week at the end of each year. And we had projects and we learned, oh my gosh, so much stuff. But spiritual psychology, how it was described to us was that the word psych, which is the root word of psychology, is when you look it up, like the etymology, I think it says like breath of life. And when you add the ology to it, it becomes the study and science of the mind. And somehow it said, I think it was psych says spirit, breath of life. And that somehow goes completely out the window. And so the intention was really to bring these two together, to recognize that we are actually not humans with souls, we're souls having a human experience. And the power of bringing those two lenses into understanding our human experience. Also, what was shared is that Earth is a school and we are here to learn, and we all chose to come here. So we learned this observation journal along with, I believe, a patterning journal. And that was a way for us to really just start to collect data. We had some statistical pieces that we had to do as well, but it really was creating this practice of collecting data. And what I have found, I want to take a sidebar and just say what I have found that is so powerful about collecting data is that it takes it out of just this like posit or assessment or judgment or accusation, all the things that we tend to do naturally in how we evaluate ourselves, that I'm not saying is wrong or is incorrect, but when you actually can track information in a way where you're tracking it, it becomes data, and then you have actual data noted reference points. It takes what you're learning from whatever you're studying and makes it have much more efficacy and power. And the neutrality is a key piece, which is why I've brought it into how I share and teach it and practice it. Because when you collect data, it's not about walking into it with preconceived ideas. It's about seeing what the data tells you, seeing what the data teaches you. So I learned this skill. I believe we learned it in the first year, and then it's because there's several we learned in the first year and more we learned in the second year, and it kind of takes you through. But what's so powerful about it is that the universal mind that we live in here is really this polarity thinking. And it's the way the limbic, I'm gonna give you my Reader's Digest explanation here, but it's like the limbic brain, which is, our fight, flight, stress response, which is back here in our amygdala, is attempting to always keep us safe. And it's living rooted in a lot of old, like primal old technology, and it's relying on our updated present technology to guide it, to manage it. But because we're not really taught this as we develop, we almost like create a whole life not really often knowing how it's leading us. So then we don't develop an ability to go, oh, no, let me decide what's happening here, not what your body is responding to inside. And since we don't have all of that knowledge and awareness and skill, we're kind of often being led by that emotion that is scary or uncomfortable, however you might label it. And then based on who you are and how you've developed your own coping skills, is how you end up responding to your life. So the power of having a neutral observation practice is that you start to become a witness. You start to become a witness that if you are dedicated and intentional about the neutrality, then you step into what I would call as like a social or spiritual scientist, where you are just choosing to be a learner. You're choosing to be an observer. You're choosing to witness. And it's not always easy to do. It's something I have to still remind myself to do in any given moment. And it's become such a natural part of my own operating system that I can often catch myself, or let's just say I'm working through something. I have found that when I'm learning something, I end up talking about it more. And I realize that's a way of I'm integrating it. But because I have this skill and this practice of neutral observation, instead of me going straight to and then being stuck in the polarity thinking that's basically judgment and wanting to make whatever it is, which often is about myself, so making myself wrong and then just piling on the judgments, which not only is debilitating and lowers just our own vibration, and it's just not always very kind or necessary. But there's also not a lot that you can do with that. That's why a lot of people just stay stuck in that hamster wheel of wrong making and, more life and wrong making. And sometimes we don't see that that's just part of how what we're learning, and it's also part of being a human being, having a human experience. So I think I've, fairly expressed, what this is. But it really is about developing this ability to be the observer. And it's about being the observer of yourself. It's you will naturally become a better observer about everything, but it's about slowing down the critic, slowing down the an analyzer, and slowing down the meaning making, because that's also how the brain works. The brain is trying to create a story. The brain loves stories. And so it wants to understand what it's seeing. And so it'll make shit up to create the story, right? So all of that is being quelled by this intention to just be an observer, to just like get curious. And how I practice it and how I learned it, I think I mentioned having a patterning journal and having an observation journal. Those were two different practices, but they really, at least in my memory, they kind of overlapped and created this skill set. But you keep a journal on your bedside. I'm actually creating a tool that I'm going to sell soon, and that's not why I'm sharing this video. But it's like when we have a something that's there to support us, it just supports us in actually seeing something through. All the practices that we can have in our human life, when we have, like, I notice it when I do meal prep, I eat better, I eat healthier foods. And this is having a journal. I really recommend it's something that you write, but it literally can be a couple of sentences, and you do it right before you go to sleep. I recommend doing it every night for as long as you can. It's okay if you miss a night here and there, but a minimum 3 to 4 times a week. And you are literally just capturing and you're answering the question, what did I notice today? And that will evolve for you. But it's just keeping you in this practice of just going back in your mind through your day of like what went on and letting it be okay, whatever comes forward. You don't have to go open up your calendar and go hour by hour. I mean, you can, but that's not the point. The point is while you're actually, it's actually, let me just state these two parts that are not obvious, but they're key parts that I think are fascinating about how humans, become who they are, and how much like inner intelligence we do have, is that you noticing what you pay attention to is what you're ready to learn. It's what's like trusting that intuition, what's coming forward for you easily. That's the information to lean into. You don't have to like get it all at once, and actually when we do that, we miss stuff. It gets diluted. So my encouragement in my practice is just, writing down a couple of lines about what you remember throughout the day, and letting what came forward be enough and be okay and be interested in that. Like it could be, for example, how your day started. Like if your memory at the end of your day was that you had perhaps a really good start to your day, and you're like commenting on, I got up early today and I had this extra time, it felt like, to just begin my day. And I was able to make a cup of coffee at home, and I wasn't rushing to get to my first appointment of the day. I'm just giving you that as an example. On the flip side, you could have had something that happened during the day, and that's what's really present. This person I work with, or this partner that I have, or this customer, and without, again, there's no story, there's no wrong, there's no like, oh, it's more like I had this meeting. After it, I felt really frustrated and stuck. And hopefully you're getting the picture, but it's about becoming the observer, the witness, as I've said multiple times, and just trusting what comes forward, and really holding on judging it, judge making of it, and storytelling of it, and thinking of yourself as a social or spiritual scientist, and just capturing the data. You start doing this, you are naturally going to see things. And the reason why the neutral is there is because you are not collecting data to make yourself wrong. You are not collecting data to build a case. You are collecting data to become more aware. You're collecting data to become more expanded and evolved. You're collecting data to learn more about yourself. Because even how you think about things, like in any of the challenges or like the stackers, we would call people in our lives that trigger us like stackers, it's all there to teach you. They're all teachers. And all of it is attempting to mirror you back to you, because the universe wants you to grow and it wants you to expand and it wants you to heal, because it knows that that is the path of your own self-actualization, of your own awareness, but also where you become more powerful. Because when you become more aware of yourself and you a practice like this, it's very fortifying. It builds your self-esteem. It helps you. It naturally does that, because when we take care, it's like, have you noticed that when you do something for yourself, whether you like meal prep or you go for a long walk or you take the time to take care of something, have you ever felt like uplifted? Does that, I hope that lands, because I feel like I started noticing that. Like when I would cook and I would take my time cutting, and part of it was meditative, but it was also just like, oh, I'm spending time in this present moment with myself. It just felt honoring. And those kinds of experiences are reminding you of your wholeness, and they're just life-giving. But they often can also build your own self-esteem and your awareness of your own intrinsic worthiness, because you've invested time in yourself. So this practice has unending dividends. And I know I said I was going to tell you also how it's changed my life, and I want to be mindful of how long this video is. And I think my battery is going to die, which is never the case for me, but I didn't want to miss the time to do this. So that's the practice. That's how you can do it eventually. And if you're interested, to let me know, land some questions, and I'll share more about what you do with the data once you start collecting it over time. And as I said, you will start to see things. How this has changed my life is that one of the most powerful is, I grew up with a father who was a musician who traveled a lot, and I said goodbye to him as a little girl 15, 20 times a year, which was not really good for my nervous system and had a major impact on me. And then my father eventually moved to the other side of the country when my parents split up. So without getting all the details, I will say that I definitely had my own daddy wounds and all that stuff that can happen from something like that, if you can imagine. And our relationship has, had it run its course. Now we're in a space that I never could have predicted. And a lot of where we're at, which is, we're very close now, and I've had experiences with him now where he's been coming and visiting me for Thanksgiving for a while, and we get my Christmas tree together and we spend time together. And there's things that have happened in those times together that have been so like unexpectedly sweet and of course healing. But because of this skill of neutral observation, I started to see things. I started to see where I belonged, and that was important to me. That might sound like a duh, but I never really thought of it that way. I started to learn things about my father and not just see him as my father, but see him as a man, a Mexican man who was just trying to figure out his path and how to make money. And, when you're a musician, if you can imagine. And I started to also, one of the most significant was not the last trip, but the one before that, after I got home from taking him to the airport when he left, which is always very emotional for me, if you can imagine airports and me or not. I had this awareness that all the pain that I have been feeling about my father was based on all these ideas that I created unconsciously, right? Like that I didn't know. And they were based in real experiences, but they were then deductions, and they created a story. And that story was not a good story. It was not a story that uplifted me. It was not a story that felt good to me. It was a story for me to feel sad, and for me to feel where I was wronged, or where I didn't get what I wish I could have gotten. Every child does all of that. And to cut to the chase, essentially, I just had this like, it felt like this one time where I was like, oh my gosh. And this is part of the human condition and experience. And it's also, I think, exacerbated because we don't learn a lot of stuff about our inner operating system or skills like this. But it was because of this practice that I just had this aha of like, oh, I don't have to continue that narrative because that's the thing that's trapping me in 40-ish more years in the future, in the past. And I was actually able to share it with some of my younger siblings, and I think it helped them. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that lands. And I would love to hear any questions you have if this is landing for you. And I am going to try this style. I'm not going to edit this video. I'm just going to go post it, which means I'm not going to be putting a bunch of time codes and everything. And I'm just going to try this style for a while and see what happens. And if you're new to my channel, my name is Jennifer, and I am here every day to remind you that your truth is your power. So trust yourself and watch your life transform. I'll see you tomorrow.